Good afternoon, everyone. I'll stay here so that you look at me, not you look at the slides, not me, and I can also not see. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our panel. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Ricote. I'm with the PPP Center, Public-Private Partnership Center. Yes, there's that office in the Philippines mandated to be the lead agency in pursuing PPPs. Of course, the earlier panel talked about, the earlier presenters talked about PPPs in other non-state actors, with other non-state actors, NGOs, civil society, and even our Rotary. But what we have in the PPP program is that partnership arrangements we have with private business, particularly in pursuing infrastructure and development projects. Can we go to that, please? The title of my presentation is actually PPPs in Local and Community Development, Leveraging Private Sector Inputs in Local Development. And this is aligned with our theme of how we can leverage, expand, and maximize the prospects of engaging private sector in local and community development initiatives. As I said, the first slide is that in the Philippines, the good thing, at least compared to our neighbors in the region, is that our law itself, our constitution defines private sector as partner in development. So aligned with that governance framework, where we are looking at private business as a non-state actor, providing us input into actual development initiatives. There's a formal legal basis from where we draw private sector participation in infrastructure and development projects. So there, private sector as partner in development, that's defined in our constitution. We look at private sector as partner as a governance actor. Private sector brings in not just financing, but efficiency inputs in construction, operations, maintenance, ICT, information communications and technology inputs into our traditionally government-initiated infrastructure and development projects. Can you go to the next slide, please? Sorry, something's wrong with the... Yeah. You can use my laptop, actually. Dun na lang sa laptop ko ilagay yung... Just click the next slide, please. So private sector as partner in development, that's embodied in our Philippine Constitution. That's from where our legal framework on PPPs emanate from. We have a BOT law. We have mechanisms where national and local governments can enter into formal partnership agreements. Next slide. It's not working. Sorry for this. Is there na? Okay, sorry. That's within my 5 minutes. I can do this. Private sector as partner in development, embodied in our Philippine Constitution. Next slide, please. Next slide. We have formally launched a PPP program. As you know, in 2010, we had the formal PPP program taking off from our long history of BOTs and corporatization initiatives. We had an inclusive growth program at that time, and we engaged private sector in most of our PPP projects. Next slide. The current administration, in fact, took on this initiative. The President Duterte mentioned, well, he put together his program in what he refers to as the 10-point socio-economic agenda. Number 4 of that is PPP. Increased infrastructure spending to improve infrastructure and development requirements, with PPPs playing a key role. I also put in this slide agenda number 3, 5, 7, and 8, all talking about private sector inputs into key areas such as health, education, science and technology, and several other development sectors. In other words, even our agenda, the current administration, recognizes private sector input through PPPs. Next slide. Next slide, please. And so we look at this. We look at private sector as financing, in fact. We look at private sector as a resource. We have very limited resources, our own budget or government appropriations. We have official development assistance coming from our development partners, and we have private sector finance as a resource. And we can do all of them individually or combinations. We call them hybrid PPPs. Next slide. So what's PPP? We have different definitions of PPP, very broad term covering various mechanisms for private sector, non-state actors, civil society, private business can participate in government's delivery of goods and services. But the formal PPP program, at least in this administration, refers to those contractual agreements between government and a private company, typically in infrastructure and development projects. As a formal contractual agreements, we can talk about BOTs, PPPs, concessions, joint ventures, etc. Next slide. Next slide, please. So again, very good point here. PPP is not privatization. This is a common misconception. When they say privatization, that's when government delegates the mandate, the delivery of goods and services to the private sector. PPP is not that. PPP is government initiation, engaging private partner to help him in a particular portion of the work: construction, operations, maintenance, service delivery, community engagement. Next slide. Next slide. Down, please. What can be done as PPPs in our program? We have redefined infrastructure in this country. We refer to them as infrastructure and development projects. In other words, not just your hard infra that you know that we do as PPP, roads, toll roads. We can do PPPs even in simple ICTs. Coronadal City, for example, has done a PPP ICT project, automation of their municipal operations, thereby enjoining ICT inputs, private sector, of course, helping them operationalize better, improved, faster, ICT-based municipal operations. The beep card that you're experiencing in our MRT system is an IT project. It's a PPP project. The LRA, the NSO project are PPP projects, engaging private sector creativity into ICT, using ICT in service delivery mechanisms. So we can do hard infrastructure, we can do PPPs in even smaller social infrastructure projects such as public health, such as hospitals. Northern Samar, for example, has a pharmacy project for the community done as PPP. Next slide. Institutional framework, as I said, it's a PPP program. There's a contractual agreement between government and the private company, core companies. The public here is government agency, can be local government unit, national agency, government corporation, or a state college or university even. UP, for example, has a PPP project called the UP Techno Hub. It's a lease agreement with private sector developing the whole facility, thereby UP avoiding the cost of putting that facility. Next slide. Next slide, please. There's a cycle that we have to follow in putting these projects together, project preparation, etc. And this is where the challenge of institutional readiness comes in. Next slide. Next, please. What do we have in our PPP pipeline? We have this 56 plus projects in various stages of implementation. We have awarded 15, and you can see this in our country right now. The NAIA Expressway connecting terminals 1, 2, and 3, that's a PPP project. The Anghari School Building, and Lex Connector, Cavite Laguna Expressway, several others in various stages of development. These are PPPs. Of course, the big ones at the national government. At the local level, community level PPPs, we also have the following. Next slide, please. Several LGU projects that we have been talking to, and they are preparing PPPs. Batangas Public Market, there's a Bagao Water Supply System. Bagao is up in the north, and several other community development type of projects in Coronadal, in Bohol, in Santa Rosa, in solid waste facility, waste to energy projects being put together as PPPs. Next slide. Okay, I was asked to respond to these questions in this session. First, how are exemplary PPPs providing win-win solutions to all parties? And there are win-win solutions to all of this. On the part of the public sector, how is this beneficial? What's the win-win input here? It provides government the ability to tap private sector resources. It doesn't have to be just financing. It enjoins government, it gives the government ability to tap private sector efficiencies that may be too costly or may not be readily available in government agencies, government offices, given institutional resource limitations. So ICT systems, innovation and construction, operation, service delivery inputs. On the part of the private partner, what's the win-win input here? It provides them opportunity to contribute and participate in real project delivery. Because as I said, they have the mandate to do so. On the part of the general public, with private sector coming in, it provides them more options in the service delivery inputs. It's not always government relying to deliver all of this. And there are projects that generate resources for government, thereby allowing government to generate resources on top of what they have and then use it for other social requirements. Next slide. Sorry, I just have one too. How can PPPs, this is part of the question being posed to us in the panel, how can PPPs leverage each party's expertise and resources to deliver lasting results? Number one, there has to be clearly delineated partnership agreement. Who's in charge of what? And this goes back to very clearly defined contracts or agreements or delineation of tasks. For example, public sector can best handle right-of-way acquisition, can best handle provision of local laws and regulations, standards, they can set that. But private sector can be tasked to do, for example, ICT inputs, service delivery, provide construction and monitoring inputs, defining what it is the best, what is that private sector and what is that government can do on their own, and we join them together to a partnership arrangement. In other words, defining who can best do what, and having them agree to do that collaboratively. And finally, due diligence at all decision points. This is a process of engagement that we have to start with the correct decision points. What is the project? And that's project preparation, structuring. That's where contract drafting, MOA preparation comes in. Number two, approvals. These are engagement of government that has to go through approvals processes, especially if they will enjoin some resources, bidding, procurement, COA. These are requirements available and should be followed through in the legal requirements. Number three, selection of the private partner. Of course, we engage private sector, but there's a process of selecting the best private partner who can bring in the best input in that partnership arrangement. That can be a process as well, provided for by law or provided for some legal and procedural requirements. Finally, implementation. Critical implementation decisions. The project doesn't stop when, or doesn't end when a MOA has been signed, a contract has been signed. This is the start of a long relationship, and that's where implementation inputs, monitoring, tracking, mitigation, calling the concerned agencies or unit or partner when things happen, even public being involved in tracking, monitoring, calling on raising issues as they happen on the ground. This is where decision points and inputs and community involvement probably can be very important in public partnership projects, PPP projects, implementation stage. Last, sorry. Prospects and challenges, and this is my last slide, probably a good take-off in our discussion or question and answer that can come after. The PPP program is recognized as most advanced in the ASEAN. We've had presence in the ASEAN. We hosted the PPP Networking Forum at ASEAN last year. We're hosting it now in the Philippines. We're named PPP Advisory and PPP Leader of the APEC Advisory Panel. We have a solid framework, but we also have our share of failures and lessons evolving alongside with this whole PPP agenda. It's easier said than done, but we have a base from where we can start developing this partnership prospects. So I conclude with saying PPP is not just public-private partnership. It goes back to very detailed project identification and preparation. So I would say PPP is, in fact, properly prepared project with our private partners. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much to our 5